This talk will be tailored to the individual that has made leaps and bounds in their individuation experience, and to individuals alike that are just getting there, just finding their way there, or maybe they've heard of individuation because of looking at a few books that Carl Jung has read, or maybe they heard about what individuation is from a YouTube video, maybe one of my videos here, and they want to know maybe more about what that is, and also to the contrast of what it's not. Okay. And I tell you, it can be a very, very lonely path, and the loneliness is you could say it's a byproduct of stepping into that nature, that new nature. Hey, how's it going, you guys? Isaiah Grant back again with Thinking in Circles, and tonight I have a little something for you that may be a little bit off the normal kilter. It may be a little bit abnormal of a idea to talk to you guys about, but the reason why I'm gonna do this is because it centers upon one of the most founding principles and bedrock principles. Like, what are we trying to get at if we study occultism, or if we study Kabbalah, or if we study Jungian psychology? Just in a nutshell, we're trying to reach the self, a knowledge of the self, a workable knowledge of the self that we can reach and then also transmute and impute down through our physical representations before you to another, so that we can really just show the authenticity of who we are, and actually be who we truly are, aside from the programming that's foisted upon us, and in order to do so, I'm going to have to touch on some subjects that may deal with day-to-day life, contemporarily, might touch a little bit into politics. However, it's going to stay on the level of spirituality and on the level of archetypes and mythology. So we're gonna veer a little bit, but it's going to be pulled back right into the on the level at which we speak here from day to day. But this talk will be tailored to the individual that has made leaps and bounds in their individuation experience, and to individuals alike that are just getting there, just finding their way there, or maybe they've heard of individuation because of looking at a few books that Carl Jung has read, or maybe they heard about what individuation is from a YouTube video, maybe one of my videos here, and they want to know maybe more about what that is, and also to the contrast of what it's not. Okay. And I tell you, it can be a very, very lonely path, and the loneliness is you could say it's a byproduct of stepping into that nature, that new nature. And it is also something that is a byproduct of stepping away from being a part of the social constructs and the what do you call it? The group containers, the group vessels that you once might have adhered to. Okay. And I hope this isn't too long, but every word is needed to be said. I sat up, I wrote this up, I went online, looked up a lot of information to juxtapose and look at what it is that I'm saying, so I can make sure to give you guys the absolute best here tonight. And if you sit and listen, you may enjoy what you hear, and you may come back to your own mind and your own self with an idea of what individuation is, what it's not, Also, how to embark on this most important task that you ever will embark upon in your life. How also too many people never get onto that road. We're going to talk about it all here, and we're going to talk about it using the lens of what has just been going on, like what you can just openly and plainly see in the world around you right now. What is going on? You know what I mean? Because I'll open up my YouTube, for instance, and I will see some things that I mean, I never asked to have all this stuff that's coming through my YouTube feed right now. You guys are probably dealing with the same thing. A bunch of stuff revolving around politics and Israel and Palestine and stuff. I'm like, dude, the only thing I ever really wanted to see on my my front's page was things about you know, psychology, spirituality, mythology. That's the same things I'm talking to you guys about right here. However, I've been getting the narrative that they want me to latch on. And for those of us that have been falling in maybe to watching some of the videos, because we all want to be informed, we all want to see what's being said in the news, whether we believe in the news or not. And I personally, I don't really believe them, any of the news medias, further than I can throw them, because the media is the way that they get in our mind, and they throw us narratives so that we can latch on the psychological hooks and then start projecting on our fellow man over here, and it just makes the world a worse place. And maybe that's just what they want it to be. But anyways, without further ado, because I'll get to rambling here longer than I need to, and then I should, I'm going to start here with the lecture, okay? And the lecture, I call it, okay, I've written this up, it's Stockholm Syndrome as a Collective Mechanism from Nicaea to the YouTube feed, okay? From Nicaea being, you know, back in the times when they were putting the Bible together, things were being formulated. That was the media back then. That was what they used to bring people together, and also to control the masses in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? But you know, the YouTube feed is what's being used to do that. TikTok, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so basically here, what I'm saying, what I've written tonight, I want to explore a hard idea with care and with clarity, that the psychological pattern we call Stockholm Syndrome doesn't just live inside individuals. It can scale up and organize entire societies. This is what I'm seeing happening, okay? And this is exactly what I will argue is occurring right before our eyes at this time. And we will look at where it might have started as far as Westerners are concerned, and as far as historical documentation attests. And I'm really going to say that I believe wholeheartedly that this is happening. You know, this is something that's happening. It's not just oh man, maybe what if, oh man, imagine this conspiracy theory. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I look at the situations as they're occurring. I look at the symbology. I look at the juxtaposition with things from the past, and I try to call a duck, a tiger, a dog, a dog. You know what I'm saying? So before continuing, I'm just going to say shortly that, as I have shared with you guys in other lectures, you know, I previously did 10 years in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations, okay? Basically went to prison in California when I was younger, yada yada, right? And without going into this too much about everything that I saw there and all that happened, I will say that I came to see how the indoctrinated portion of society in the outside world that I was once a part of before going in, right? For instance, received their orders, and also the symbology and lore that emboldened them to do what they were doing. For example, like the culture, the dress codes, the identifying tattoos, etc. You know, the trend, okay? And what I'm talking about exactly is in street gangs, okay? They got this lifestyle, this belief from individuals within the penitentiary systems that were high-ranking and notable enough within their circle so as to be able to craft such mandates and symbolisms for those individuals to revere and also to follow in the form of orders and ways to live their life and be. Okay, they were certified to influence us, and we followed their whims, what it is that they created, and their demands. Okay, it became a way of life. Okay, a solid way of life. That's how it was given to us. Okay. When I was in there in prison, I realized that while the individuals who had done a lot of time were telling a lot of us that were coming into the prisons to mobilize against other individuals and separate ourselves based upon racial ideologies, which they called prison politics, these politics were put forth upon us so as to divide us, so that we would be easier mobilized by them towards the opposing factions, so that the individuals that ran the facilities, okay, and I am talking about high-ranking gang member inmates, prison gang members, okay, they were able to get us to fight against individuals from opposing groups at the drop of a dime, based upon petty circumstances. Okay, they would tell us, for instance, that we were fighting over something that happened between rivals in the streets. We're in there, we can't even see what's going on out there, but we're fighting over that, right? They would also tell us that it was, you know, over the fact that our rivals in there, you know, were monopolizing toilet paper rationing or clothes rationing by opposite factions in there. Like they're not trying to give us our state issue or our just due, you know. When in most cases, we were really fighting over drug money, and also of a variety of other reasons that were usually tied to money and contraband, which were being exchanged between higher ranking members of the prison system, people in prison gangs, you know what I mean? And homeboys, for instance, that were in a higher echelon than we were, you know, as like little foot soldiers and stuff, okay? And those deals were taking place behind our back, interracially, and sometimes across gang lines, which they would tell the average inmate not to do. And just so you guys know, I mean, I'm personally not a racist. I don't hold racial ideology views. I think that it's asinine and it's stupid. It's just a way to divide and get control from people, you know what I mean? And to be able to point the finger and have people do things at the drop of a dime. I could have come out of there in that state of mind, in that frame of mind, but I'll say that I was blessed enough to have had a variety of different racial groups of friends before I went in, and I'd had contact with a lot of individuals that were from rival gangs that, you know, we saw eye to eye and we were actually cool. We could put the drama aside, you know, instead of just going off on each other even outside, you know, and we were able to do business, you know. So long story short, I say this to tell you, okay, that I noticed that the same system of capitalism led to misinformation of the lower ranking individuals, which I was one of them, and that the same ramping up of competition that meritocracy causes individuals to partake in towards you know, the acquisition of supposed supremacy, the same system that we see in government affairs was being deployed in miniature scale in the prison system and utilized by individuals across racial and gang categories in order to take control of individuals that were under them and of their same category and in the same situation, really, at the end of the day, right? I began to see that this was the fact intramurally, behind the walls, right, and also in society. And I gained the eyes to see this after reading a book by Howard Zinn called "The People's History of A People's History of the United States of America," which stated that if you wanted to see a way a society is run, go and take a look at its prisons. Okay, that's a paraphrase, and that's basically what he said in there. And Howard Zinn's, in this instance, was dead on with the truth. And this is what I'm revealing to you here about prison, in my estimation, as it spans into world politics and also into religion. And politics and religion drive the narratives of not only a perceived sense of meaning, but also unify people towards a pre-fashioned goal, which is said to consummate the meaning for the individual followers. So now, even with this in mind, let's continue on to the rest of the lecture, okay? So I'm going to argue that the same bonding dynamic between victim and captor can appear, okay, because we're talking about Stockholm syndrome, okay? And I may throw something up here, to, you know, that can concisely help you to understand what Stockholm syndrome is. However, we're going to talk about what the syndrome does to people in here, okay? And this will show you how this is actually happening on a collective level, okay? And we continue here. I'm going to argue that the same bonding dynamic between victim and captor can appear in religious, political, and cultural systems, and this helps explain why people often defend powers that repeatedly harm or exploit them. I'll trace this from the early 4th century Roman world to the way many of us emotionally engage in modern conflicts today. And this is not to attack anyone's faith or politics, but to reveal a pattern that, once seen, will give all of us back our freedom to choose, which is necessary towards individuation. You know, if you don't have the freedom to choose, individuation is impossible, okay? It's impossible then. You know, because then you're stuck on in survival mode, me versus them, and you know, you're not even looking at the humanity of an individual. Okay, so Stockholm syndrome explained is what's going to go down right here. Okay, and Stockholm syndrome, the formal description basically shows victims of Stockholm syndrome develop these 4 tendencies, okay? And these are characteristic of the mental illness, you could say, okay? But this is something that's going on a collective level now, okay? The first one is positive feelings towards the captor. The second one is no meaningful prior relationship with or to the captor, we could say, okay? So and you can see this in gangs, for instance, right? You know, you have positive feelings towards these individuals that are keeping you in this psychological container, you know, the ideology of the group. Yeah, my neighborhood, or you know, I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, or I'm a you know, somebody that's a religious extremist, or whatever, okay? So some forms of following are more extreme and caustic to the next person than others, okay? And usually, maybe these are people that you grow up with in your neighborhood, but are they family? Are they people that you know, you lay beside? Are they people that you know, have helped put clothes on your back, shoes on your feet, you know? And you'll hear in situations where parents are pleading with people to get out of these dynamics, that they're like, man, you know, your homeboys, they're not putting clothes on your back and food in your mouth and stuff like that. They're not bailing you out of the joint when you end up going there, you know? No meaningful prior relationship with the captor, okay? With the group that's holding you in this containing vessel, this psychological vessel of containment, okay? Refusal to cooperate with rescuers or authorities, people that want to help you to get out of the situation, people that want to offer you a chance to see a different point of view, because they can see that it's going to lead you nowhere, okay? That's the third one, okay? Refusal to cooperate with rescuers or authorities. And then the fourth one, a belief in the captor's humanity. Man, no, man, my homeboys, you don't understand about my homeboys or these people, man. These people are better people than you guys are, you know, right? A belief in the captor's humanity and a sense of safety with them. I feel at home with these my homeboys. This is my family right here, you know? Even when that belief contradicts the threat that they pose, even to your safety. You get out of line one time, they find you in a dumpster somewhere. Okay, it can happen, you know, depending upon how high you get. For instance, in politics, you say the wrong thing, you end up going out in public, you can catch a bullet if you get on the wrong side of the conversation, or wrong side of the equation. That can happen, right? So it's quite paradoxical, you see, okay? Bystanders and onlookers, outsiders, feel fear and disdain for the abuser, for the people that are running the group, right? Because they're like, man, this is terrible with this dude. This dude's the head of this, what they're doing to these people. The victim feels loyalty and warmth. I feel good here with these guys. These are my brothers, you know? And importantly, these sentiments can follow the victim long after release from the clutches of the abuser or abusing group. In prison rhetoric, they call this recidivism. You know what I mean? Like, you get out and you try to find a way in society, and you find that things aren't working or whatever, and maybe you only lasted a week, and before you know it, it's a revolving door, you're back in the joint. But this extends from, keep in mind, this extends from criminal gangs. It extends far beyond them. This could be a religion. You've seen people get into a religion, oh, they're a Protestant or a Seventh-day Adventist or whatever they are, you know what I mean? They get out of it, and then they go through some situations that present some hardships, and before you know it, they're back in there. And sometimes with under individuals that were using them and didn't have their best interests, didn't help them when they had walked away, totally wrote them off, but they're back over there because they can't shake the ideology and the feeling of togetherness that they felt at that time, better than they felt when they were alone, trying to sort out their situation so that maybe they could perhaps stumble upon the road to individuation. Okay. So now looking at it from a political standpoint, okay, for example, okay, check this out. A population repeatedly exposed to fear and relief, threat and protection, punishment and reward can begin to internalize its captor's logic. You know, that back and forth that continues to happen, okay? The captor offers safety from a danger it defines. Sometimes a danger it helped create. Doesn't that sound narcissistic? If we were taking this from the standpoint of a society down to just one individual dealing with another individual interpersonally, that's how narcissists act. They'll create a situation so that you can turn and fall back on them so that they can help you out of it, but they created it, okay? And the people responded with gratitude, loyalty, and even love. They defended the hand that holds them because that hand also feeds, forgives, and saves them. That's the core of what I mean by using the term collective Stockholm syndrome in this lecture. So let's go on and take a look at where all this started, at least for us in the West, both politically and psychologically. I say politically and psychologically because our country of the United States of America is one of the many countries that is directly patterned off of the ideologies and foundations of Rome and Roman culture, and also psychologically because whether one professes Christianity or not here in the West, especially if one was born here in America, the vestiges of the Christian religion and Catholicism with all its symbology and inherent meaning is at the base rock embedded deep within one's psyche. And this is not my idea, okay? This is the idea posited by Carl Gustav Jung in his analytic psychology, namely Collected Works 11 is where you'll find this idea, which in a paraphrase states that Western culture's deep roots in Christianity have impressed Christian archetypes onto the collective unconscious, the universal inherited patterns of thought shared by all humanity. This means that the Christian story and its symbols structure our psychological landscape, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. He, however, added that the Christian mythos was not adequate enough to support the fullness of the idea of individuation, which would require perhaps a new religion which would center around the figure of Aquarius, as the latter is the sign of our current age, the sign of Pisces being the symbol of the Christian era. So it is at this point that I would interpret that those of us that have no knowledge of the individuation process are likely operating on an old OS or operating system, if you will. And the new OS operating system has been revealed by Jung. The newer, however, is an update on the older. So the symbol set is still valid, yet it requires an extended interpretation that fits the dispensation of the current age. Now, for those of us that utilize the Kabbalistic tree of life, we can look at the path of Gamel. We can look at the high priestess, as you can see that she carries the symbols of the religions, and she is the moon, and she represents the unconscious, meaning that these old operating systems, like everybody looks at the old and it's like, man, toss that stuff out. It's no longer worth anything. There's no use to it. But upon the older, we can actually build into an understanding of the newer. So we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, okay? We don't want to do that, because we can use these symbols and these understandings as stepping stones into the newer understanding, which is actually a reinterpretation of the old, because we have to understand that Jungian psychology was built upon Gnostic sources. It was built upon the Gnostic religion. It was built upon alchemy, which is a Gnostic ideology, okay? And Carl Jung spoke of that off the rip, you know what I mean? When I think it was in the book The Practice of Psychotherapy, I think, goes into that in the early portions of that book. And I may put that passage up on the screen, or something that will clue you in and let you know that, like, what I'm saying is like, oh man, analytic psychology was founded on Gnosticism. Yeah, right, you know. But yeah, it was. So we're still using the vestiges of the old in order to come into the new, okay? So let's now look at Constantine, Nicaea, and the fusion of the altar being where, you know, religion and ceremonial practices are done, and the throne, the place of rule, okay? So circa early 300 CE, under Emperor Constantine, the Roman state embraced Christianity. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE is known for the creation of the Nicene Creed and for engaging in many theological battles around the nature of Christ, especially Arian controversy. Now that word Arian gets really, really, really deep, right? Even when looking into the idea of Proto-Indo-European roots, because Proto-Indo-European, okay, deals with the individuals that were first in the East, okay, and the East deals with Aryan. There's actually the Aryan peoples. There's actually a debate between Eastern people, like you could say Eastern Indians, and individuals that are into the idea of Aryanism, that the Eastern Indians say that they are the real Aryans, and then the individuals that, you know, prescribe or subscribe rather to ancient European history will argue that one is the true Aryan, the other is not the true Aryan. But if you look at the Proto-Indo-European roots, and a lot of the words, they link back to the Sanskrit roots, sometimes almost perfectly, you know, which is those being the oldest root words that comprise a lot of our newer words, you know, and then everything else that came historically on the in-between. It's a very catchy idea. It's a very catchy idea, and it's a very amazing debate when you get down to the bottom of it, and you think like, okay, was this just created? Was Proto-Indo-European just like a plastic creation, a crutch helped to bridge all of these older Western languages, or were these people really the real Aryans that the Eastern Indians, the people in the East, claim to be? So without going too far on a tangent, let's continue, okay? So historians debate the exact role Nicaea played in defining the biblical canon. The broader scholarly consensus is that the canon crystallized across several centuries, with later councils and usage patterns doing much of that work. But the larger point for this argument is this: imperial power and ecclesial authority fused. Imperial power being rulership, ecclesial authority, ecclesia is the root word in that, okay, Greek, meaning the church. So the power of the church and the power of the empire fused together. They became one thing, okay? I also want to enter now, and I'm going to enter on this because of what was just last stated here, what I wrote down here, okay? I also want to enter that it naturally should have happened this way, as Venus rules both Taurus and Libra astrologically, and in the fact that religion and politics are made to rule over the minds of brutish animals, okay, which they look at us as cattle, okay, and religion is the equivalent of Taurus, okay, and we can even look at the tarot card titled the Hierophant for this, and I'll throw that up on the screen. And politics is the equivalent of Libra, and we can look at the tarot card titled Justice for this, okay, and I'll throw that up there as well though too. And both of these signs, Libra and Taurus, are under the rulership of Venus, who is the mother, okay? So you know how the Roman Church talks about the mother, okay? And then we can also look at legality, you know, with law, right? There's also the Lady Liberty or Justice, which has that veil over her face, that blindfold, okay? And that is a form of the mother, okay? So the idea that they're ruled by the mother says a whole lot. Who sent the bovine deities that were slaughtered, and sometimes, you know, some issues happen. In Nana, I think, in the Babylonian myth of I think Marduk, and in Kindu, right, they slayed a bull that was sent by Nana. Nana was Venus. Okay, the bull is Taurus, or the cow that they sent was Taurus. Okay, so these are just some really catchy things that you'll see across mythologies. Okay, and this is why I want to talk to you about these, because the symbology will really open your mind and set you free on a lot of things. Okay, you need to understand symbol sets. So both of these signs are under the rulership of Venus, who is the mother of the deck in the tarot, as the Empress tarot card. I'll throw that up here with the rest of these cards here. She rules both the Hierophant and Justice, which are respectively Taurus and Libra, she being Venus, okay? I point to the tarot because it is a symbolic system set that points to symbols that are mirrors of energy and archetypes, not only affecting nature, but also the psyche. So it is no wonder that we are talking about politics and religion and how these things are ruled under the office of an energy that represents the goading and driving principle of the instinct, which is that which I spoke about the immediately before this one. Okay, in the lecture immediately before this one, we spoke about the conjunctio urge. That's the psychological goad that says, go for this, make this happen, do this, I want this, or let's destroy this side or this faction. You know what I mean? We get prompted to do this through really contemporarily through the office of politics. Sometimes it's through the office of religion. Okay, and those link indefinitely most times to that urge inside of us that tells us, hey man, oh no, this is out of line, let's do this. This has to get handled, this person has to get handled because they're out of line. You know what I mean? We're guided by laws that serve somebody else's purpose most time. We should be goaded by the law that's really truly written on our heart. Okay, so this footnote serves as a way to see how I am looking at the archetypes and symbolic sets, and am able to relate them to situations with accuracy and clarity, so that you might be encouraged to do so yourselves. Okay, it'd be a power of discerning in your hand. It would be also a tool that you can use, hopefully, for the embetterment of people in groups that maybe you create down the line. You know, how you could help lead and maybe guide people by goading them along certain paths to certain discoveries that will lead them to themselves. Okay, so imperial power and ecclesial authority fused. Okay, and once persecuted believers in Christianity suddenly found their relief in the very empire that once hunted them. Okay, and also remember Saul of Tarsus in this light from the Bible, who was a persecutor of Christians, who turned into the theologian Paul, who got blinded and gained his sight on the road to Emmaus in the scriptures. Okay, and was also said to have written some portions of the gospel as well, though, too. Okay, Acts, I think, was written by Paul, and a few other books in the Bible. Okay, so the persecutor put on the robes of patron and protector. It's like the wolf puts on the sheep's wool. Okay, this can happen. They created a powerful transference. Fear transformed into gratitude. Vigilance relaxed into devotion. And the empire's interests could now be framed as providential, even salvific, meaning it's something that could save you. In psychological terms, this meant that Rome's victims became Rome's defenders by way of a sacred story. If you are following what I'm laying down here so far, you can see how overseas people fight. They fight and they feel right about the atrocities that they're committing when they are, and then they're relieved inside by feeling that they are doing the work of some higher power. And also in doing so, they're assured that they are the so-called elect of God, or whoever, if you will. Okay, it's all pounded into their brains through the dogma and the doctrine that they learn when they're about yay high at 5 years old, and we can look at them and say that happens with them, but it also in so many ways happens with us. Okay, also in so many ways happens with us, and that's why it's very important on the road to individuation that we throw out the prior indoctrination that no longer serves us but causes us to serve the establishment or groups of individuals, and it could be based on racial supremacy. It could be based on religious ideologies of supremacy, because we're part of this group, and we pray to this being in the sky and he says that we are the chosen, or whatever. Okay, something to think about. Okay, so this is how these theologies and stuff become ideologies and become the enacted norm for individuals in society. Okay, over time the structure persisted even when the faces changed. Okay, we think about what happened in Rome and how the Christians were freed, even though they were being tied to stakes and burned by Nero and the likes in Rome. Okay, Constantine brought them in. Okay, so the faces changed as far as who were the leaders of Christianity, of the Roman Catholic Church at those times. Okay, and the way that things were run continued, only with slight modifications into the current time. Religion sanctified obedience, politics secularized it, and the administration routinized it. The pulpit and the podium, the altar and the flag, all of these would become psychological symbols, and as symbols, vessels, psychological containers for the same pattern that existed as of old. And this is basically what they were saying to these individuals. I mean, if you could take what was the mantra that was going through their heads, okay? It was trust in me, fear them, together we are invincible. Okay, Rome was talking about Sol Invictus, undefeatable sun. Okay, together we are invincible. Ultimately, I, the emperor, okay, the ruler, will save you. The people, like hostages, were trained to rationalize their confinement, okay, or we could say they're acquiescing into the psychological group container as moral duty, fidelity to God, to nation, and to the so-called order. Okay, so we're gonna look at some ideas that deal with trauma, intermittent rewards, and double binds. Okay, and how this keeps this type of bond, this type of unity in these psychological container groups active. Okay, here's what keeps the bond alive: intermittent reinforcement, alternating fear of chaos, heresy, enemies, with the opposite. Okay, now here's the opposite: relief, amnesty, prosperity, salvation. oh, these people are our enemies. Oh, your brother over there, man, he transgressed against us or whatever, man. You know, okay, you know, we could kill him, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna beat him up real bad, you know, and you got to take part in it. You got to take part in it, man. You know, you're lucky that we don't have you handle this whole situation. This is what happens in gangs, you know. And then after that beating, they bring everybody back in and lay down the law. This is what it is, man. You know, this is for your own good, man. Because we're trying to keep this sewed up, man, so that it's watertight and nothing else gets in, man. You know, you made a mistake, but out of this mistake, man, let's all come together and let's do this right. You know what I mean? And usually that person that received the beating, that person that's mind was kind of warped from having to go in on his own family member, ends up being more tied and more strengthened by the situation, because they feel like they receive mercy, because, you know, something could even happen to the brother that got involved in the situation. Okay, it's some things to think about, how these little games are played. Okay, so this is the strongest schedule for conditioning loyalty. Okay, it's conditioned. Okay, these are also seen in Kabbalistic ideology by looking at the left hand of severity and the right hand of mercy, which holds the power and sway over the adherent, okay, which we can look at in Tifereth in Olam HaMergash, okay, which is the world of morals being the word underlined, which everyone in any organization is linked to in some form. They're linked to the world of morals. Reward and punishment is the way that animals are trained into humble creatures that serve the master in whom they seek their recourse. Something to think about, okay? Trauma bonding definitely is a factor in this concoction, because when the dynamic dyad meaning two, of rescuer and abuser are the same figure, gratitude and dependency, another two, fuse with anxiety and shame, forming a strangely addictive quaternary. We get a quaternary from this dyad, okay? A square from a line. And this square is a system. It's a system that continues to self-reinforce and continue throughout all ages if done in a way that reinforces it throughout genealogical lines, okay? The double bind could be stated by such a group in a phrase such as this, okay? And by what I mean by stated by such a group, by the leaders of such a group: we harm you to protect you. We limit you to free you. Resistance feels like betrayal of the very thing that promises safety and meaning. So the constituents continue with blood, sweat, and tears, counting this grueling labor and humiliation as their own earned worthiness and virtue. And this is the hallmark and adage of many different groups. We gotta see you sweat. We gotta see you bleed in order to know that you're really on our side, in order to know that you're gonna be valuable to us. Otherwise, I mean, it's not gonna be easy come. That's the way they go after these things. Okay, so this story world, that they weave on these individuals, okay, defines the boundaries of reality for them. Okay, if meaning only exists inside the story, leaving the story feels like annihilation. And this is how they keep you trapped in the following, with the rest of the individuals in the proverbial fishbowl. The latter of which, if they could see the container from the outside, might choose to jump out and leave it abruptly. Okay, a lot of times when we're in a group, we can only see the others inside the fishbowl. We can't see what the world outside looks like, and we don't want to do it, because if we did, that's kind of too scary to go out on your own, to make your own business, to go against the group's demands and wishes, maybe to get out of the gang and become a preacher, you know what I mean, and save some souls or whatever. Or you weren't in trouble, Maybe you're in a situation where you could be in trouble. You're linked up with some individuals. Instead, you become a probation officer or a police officer. You know what I mean? Oh, but you can't kick it around those people anymore, and they're gonna make fun of you. They're gonna look down at you and try to spit on your shoes. You know, these are some very base ideas that I'm throwing out here that link to understanding this. Okay, so a contemporary case study, okay, on this whole situation, right? It talks about emotional capture at a distance. Okay, this is how they get you. This is how they get you. This is how they link in with you at any part of the world that you are. Because for instance, in gangs, and I'm gonna give you that for instance, that sometimes there's factions of the same gang that, let's say in LA or in Chicago or in Texas or whatever, in other parts of the world, and they got to follow the lines, follow the orders, kick down money sometimes to the founders of these groups, and look out for founders of these groups in order to be deemed good, or in order to still be seen as cohesive with the group and as part of the group. You know what I mean? So there's a system of use and abuse, and keep in mind, in friendships, in groups, there is going to be use. The problem, like a old Freemason I knew told me, is when the use turns into abuse. That's the problem. That's the dividing line of where you can see, okay, is this a situation that's good for my life, good for my mind, and good for my soul? You know what I'm saying? So continuing forward, so as to apply this idea to the present day, I want you to think about this with me. Many of us feel intense, visceral reactions to conflicts that are occurring far from our native soil, far away, far from the matters that impact our daily lives, reactions that exceed our direct knowledge and experience. A great and ongoing example of this is how Americans relate to Israel or Palestine. That's on the political front, right? People with no direct stake in either side can feel profound moral certainty and emotional investment. Why is this? The personal unconscious and the shadow weigh in heavily as the answer. And that's where we got to start our work into individuation, okay? Because many were catechized, okay, basically indoctrinated. We had to, catechism is something that you recite in the church, so that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you're saved, and you know the edicts of the church, and you know how you're expected to act in there, basically an indoctrination, okay? Because many were catechized religiously or culturally into a story in which specific peoples, places, and conflicts carry transcendent meaning, okay? Political actors then invoke that story to mobilize your loyalty. They are actually seeing how this tactic has been working in their best interests on both sides, okay? So I may put a short clip of this, and once again, I'm not trying to get political and get you guys all, let's start watching the news and stuff like this, but let's look at how it's happening politically. I'm going to put a news clipping up here so you can see what I'm talking about, okay? After I read this. Let's think about how openly Netanyahu, for instance, right? Prime Minister of Israel, right? Or whatever, right? Spoke recently about weaponizing social media platforms against Americans as a tool of propaganda. It's a war for our moral support and for our minds, okay? Olam ha-mergash, that's the heart, that's the mind. That's where you'll find Lavav, the heart and the mind in the Kabbalistic system. This is what they're in a war for. Knocking you down over the head when you're doing something wrong, lifting you up for a while when you're doing something good, waiting on you to make a situation happen so they can knock you back down, if indefinitely, so that everybody else gets scared and gets in line a little bit better so that they get what they want.
Talked about the woke right, and he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, you know, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're loonies. But they're actually meeting on some of the things. We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. to that community. They're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is
Followers. Followers.
TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important?
X.
X. That's
Cesspool.
very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight.
It's a war for our moral support and for our minds, okay, as I said. And the soil they want to plant their seeds in is very rich due to years of breathing in our Western indoctrination. The result is emotional capture at a distance. We bond the narratives that precede our analysis. They come before even our even being able to think about it. Inherit enemies we never even met. And outsource our conscience to voices that sound like the ones that once soothed our fear. But if we look over the past of years of this same song and dance, hopefully we can see that these groups which wish to utilize our highest self for their aims are all the same face and extend the same empty hand. There's nothing in the hand that they reach out to us and try to give us. Oh, here's something. It's nothing. As they make promises of giving us an answer and something better than what has been the obvious, the empty hand. The empty hand. And we're chained to their throne, just like ATU 15, the devil card. We're chained to their hand. Or chained to their throne, and at their hands, it's nothing beyond the obvious. You're not getting anything, So my point here is not to act as a final judge on the conflicts that are happening contemporarily or diminish anyone's suffering. I'm not here to do that at all, okay? It's to show the mechanism, to unveil the mechanism, to pull the veils off the mechanism, and people may be mad at me for doing such a thing, okay? A preloaded mythic frame is what it is, right? Plus intermittent fear and reassurance, okay? And this creates durable loyalty, even when the costs are borne by the very citizens who defend the very system itself, okay? We're the ones that end up footing the bill for all of this. Oh, go out and protest this. Okay, you're in jail. Who did anybody pay to bail you out? Or to get you out? You got pepper sprayed, you got maced. Did anybody pay for your doctor bills? Because you got a doctor visit maybe coming up after those injuries that you sustained. Oh no, but you feel one with the cause. You feel better about that. I've been in prison riots where people have gotten stabbed. People didn't make it back out to see another day, because they died. And at the end of the day, I've gotten hurt in some of those riots, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, what did I get for that? What did I get for that? But a person that used to be my friend that was my older homeboy that turned his back on me because I couldn't give him $50. What $50? Everything I went through is worth $50. $50. So it's just something to think about, the cycle and the chain, the continuous chain of usury, okay? That we willingly allow ourselves to be a part of, okay? We're the ones that defend the system. We're the ones that have to foot the bill for the system and end up getting crushed when we can't do it, or even when we do very well. We're the ones that end up having to foot the bill, So let's finally take this this whole idea into an archetypal level, okay, and get into what the Jungian framework might add as to what we are seeing, and for sure, maybe we've been blindly experiencing, okay, as a result of our faith and allegiance to those who would make scapegoats of us all. What's happening underneath is a misdirection of sacred trust, the archetype of the king/father. Think about that. We've heard of these no kings protests, down with the father. We've seen that in all these households across the nation. Men being villainized, you know, and not to say that men are perfect and that women are totally imperfect, but we've seen this. We've seen this villainization, okay? And the warped nature that this archetype is manifesting into this time that we are in now, okay? And the king slash father is supposed to be the image of order, blessing, and protection, okay? But it gets inflated and projected onto institutions and leaders in this phenomenon, okay? That we're talking about directly here in this this Stockholm syndrome, this collective Stockholm syndrome. We hand over our inner sovereignty for the comfort of belonging to a larger certainty. It's bigger than us, so it must be the best thing, you know? Carl Jung once stated something that said that if the path seems certain and it seems you know, it seems like there's gain and it seems like everything's gonna go right there, you might be on somebody else's path, you know? The path, when it comes to individuation, it's a lonely path. It's sometimes it's fraught with a lot of times that you may look at yourself and say, man, I don't know why did I even get out here on this like this, you know? So it's something to think about, okay? I've spoken much about this whole idea in previous lectures, okay, as far as psychological containers are concerned. And from an alchemical standpoint, we are dealing with the nature of Solutio, okay? This the alchemical step of Solutio. I'm going to throw that up on the screen so that you can see containment, the idea of containment with the group, vessels of psychological containment, okay? We're talking about this right now. We're exhibiting some of the more negative elements that come out of this idea, okay? So individuation is the psychological task of becoming a whole person, and it requires withdrawing those projections that we have, that we place on things, that we place on people that we think are higher than ourselves, okay? And this is one of the main reasons why I am speaking about this type of topic and relating it to individuals, okay? That in this age of Aquarius, okay, they might have entered the party a little bit late, you know, and I'm talking about people that don't understand what individuation is at all, or maybe they just picked up a book on this subject, all right? It may seem like it's a little bit late. We got time, okay? We got time. This is what we're talking about, the shadow work that's necessary in order to disentangle yourself from these followings that are just dragging you down and to get back to who you really are yourself, okay? Back to the self, okay? So you guys are here nevertheless and need some information that can get you on that could get you on the road to this journey, okay? And then some of you guys are already making leaps and bounds in this, but this idea is allowing you a different look at maybe some things you're sliding into even after having gone through and understanding the individuation process and what it takes to move closer and closer towards that, you know what I mean? And it's never one quick fix. It's a path that ever circles and spirals back to the, you know, to the center, and then it goes back out and then it goes back in, you know. It can help us catch our bearings if we're a little bit off now at this time, okay? Individuation here means meeting the inner father archetype consciously rather than fusing with its outer imitations. Without that withdrawal of projection, obedience feels holy, submission feels safe, and dissent feels like sin. Collective Stockholm syndrome in this light is the mass failure of individuation. And you can easily see this if you have disconnected yourself from the mainstream and you look out into society over all the people that are chasing empty shadows, empty promises, and are doing so from within one of the many confines of collective containers that have been promoted towards individuals as having the answers for peace, joy, and happiness, and also the pursuit of health and wealth. These usually end up with the follower being thrown away, cast away, despondent, and at the end of their rope. The group container ends up shattered, and the follower usually ends up swinging from the end of that rope, okay? Let's say a political container let's look at that, right? A religious container. Let's say that it's that they're swinging from, and that they're in these things, and they're getting their self mirrored back to them from these things, okay? And they're doing so because what they wish to achieve above and beyond the guise of these things, okay, is finding a knowledge of their higher self. These groups only offer a mirror, which only work for the individual, okay? The guy at the top. It's working for him. How's it working for you? He has to let you in gradually to the mysteries, but maybe he's doing so, okay? He's initiating you into these higher levels. Oh, you know, you'll get a promotion, and you know, you'll be a owner at some point or whatever. They're stringing you along, right? Per se, we can look at it that way. But that ports off into several other things. Oh yeah, one day you little homie, you'll be an OG or whatever, you know. But you're not telling me about how many knives and how many bullets and everything else I'm gonna have to dodge in order to get there. And then how pointless it is, because all these other guys are telling me it's pointless that I'm sitting in here with in blues behind a cell bars. Wow. You know, I never knew it was like this. Had I known this, I wouldn't have even got in, you know? So this group only offers a mirror, which only works for the individual if they invest their individuality, which also entails them to invest with their blood, sweat, and tears, as I aforementioned, okay? So now, to be fair, okay, not all devotion is pathological, okay? And not all loyalty is captured. So if you're devoted to something, it doesn't mean you're crazy. And then if if you're loyal to something, it doesn't mean you're duped. It doesn't mean you're captured, but you are in some form of a psychological container. And some people that are meeting these energies of yourself back to you are guiding you through a wholesome process, okay? I'm not going to say that doesn't exist, okay? But we're headed into dark times when at every turn people are trying to use you and just get your money, okay? And more than your money, they're trying to sap you for your soul and sap you to do deeds that will please their carnal natures, okay? People can choose commitments freely with eyes open after sober thought. And in this vein of thought, we must remember that individuation comes from assessing and unburdening of oneself via the gold that is hidden in the darkness of many traumas and pains that one has had born on oneself. You know, you gotta extract the good from the bad, right? Usually from past followings, and resolving the feelings of guilt and shame that come from consciously locating and disowning these burdens that were never theirs to carry, never yours to carry. Okay. Communities can use myth and moral policies to ennoble compassion, protect the weak, and restrain violence. There's some good things that are there. My claim is not that faith or patriotism are inherently abusive, but that their shadow can be recognized by the patterns I named here, which are usually meted out by the appointed administrators of such groups. The patterns being intermittent fear / relief. Okay, one happens, here's the intermittent fear, and then here's the intermittent relief that comes. The severity, and now here comes the mercy that I give you. Okay? Identity fused to a story that cannot be questioned. Okay? So this is who you are, and this is what it's all about, and this is it, man. You got something to say about that? If you do, get on out of here. Get on out of here. You see that in politics. You see that in gangs. You see that in... Oh, you disagree? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. We don't need you. We don't need you here then, because we're not going to have one bad apple spoil the bunch. Okay? That's literally how this goes. Okay? And hostility towards rescuers who offer independent verification or alternative narratives. So somebody that comes that wants to save people from getting caught in those type of mindsets, thinking those certain ways, being those certain... Okay, you're the next Vic. We're gonna get to you, because you're scattering our people now. You know, you're offering them an out that maybe some of them want, but we can't have that. We got you. And I've seen that happen, you know. So these are some ways to kind of test for these patterns, okay, that I've written down here. And I basically say, like, if we want to regain our freedom and conscience of conscience, okay, we need some tools, okay? We need some things that we can use in order to start cracking this open and maybe, you know, examine ourselves so that we can maybe see if we're falling into some of these things, okay? Here are some of the first person tools that I personally use, okay? I use these because I like to ask this about, I've had to ask it about gym followings that I've been a part of. You know what I mean? I definitely had to ask it about, had to use these in asking about my followings of certain groups in the past. That's how I was able to get out and to actually look and say, man, this is no longer it right here. I got to do me. I got to do my own thing. I got to find out who I am past this. My own mind, my own walk, my own views, my own plans, my own goals, you know? So, when you're caused to think about us and them, the us and them in this situation, right? Whose vocabulary are you using? Is it yours, or is it a script that's handed to you? Is this something that somebody told you to think about these people? If the words arrive preloaded with emotion, you know, if you start getting out there and you start feeling a certain way about me and mine, my people, and these people, you got to slow down and you really have to think to yourself that maybe you've bought into some idea, or you've been captured into some collective group investment, maybe without your knowing it. And you're thinking out those thoughts that they're thinking, and you're just becoming a pawn to their ideology, and maybe not your true ideology, okay? Your own true ideology. Okay, so you got to ask yourself, do my leaders and also the media, do my mentors alternate this panic, put me in panic, and then offer me relief? Do they do this to me? Do they lift me up just to break me down? Do they put me on the stairs just to chop the supports out from beneath and say, oh, we'll help you up, we're here to help you? Do they do this to you? Okay, so do they make the threat and then sell the cure back to you? Something to think about. That's number 2. Okay. 3. Are the people in whatever situation, whatever equation you're looking at, that harm, are they also the entity in the group that does the saving? Okay. It's like, that's like Superman breaking down a building and then saving all the people that are falling as the building falls, because he's faster than the speeding bullet, and laying them down on the floor in safety as the building crumbles. And they're like, oh, whoa, Superman, you're the best, you know? That would be an illegitimate superhero, right? Something to think about along these lines here, okay? Now, you got to ask yourself too, you know, can I step outside this narrative and this story that's being made without feeling terror or moral collapse within inside of myself, right? If leaving behind this narrative that's been laid out by this group or this story feels like death, I may be in a negative psychological containment vessel, okay? I may be in a negative psychological group container. That's what I might have to say to myself if that's the case, okay? Maybe. I will also add that if I feel that way, okay, if I'm made to feel that way, or if you're made to feel that way, right, when you leave, that's the equivalent of a psychic vessel of containment breaking or shattering. But from this negative state, you will find the new you. Think about Jung's break with Freud and how he felt. He went through a psychosis after this happened, because his practice and also his friendship with an individual that was not only a father to him, but a mentor. Okay, that's that father king archetype, right? That was abdicated and lost, okay? And this harkens back to that father king archetype that we were speaking of earlier in the lecture, man. Okay? I said, man, I'm probably at the end of it here now. Yeah, so this is that father king archetype that capsized for him, and he had to find that within inside of himself. Okay, but psychosis happened before that. There was a psychosis that he went through. That's what brought about the red book, you know. So so your stepping away from the group could end up you finding something that you do better than anybody else, and could be something that helps you find your own greater definition. This is a proof of that in what happened with you. Okay, so you also have to ask yourself, you know, whose sufferings and interests do you weigh out most? You know, you have to distance yourself from the alignment with those myths and with those narratives that they're drawing out, right? And you also have to look at the neighbors, the people around you, the human beings that are in front of you. You know what I mean? Does this group following prioritize these narratives over your relationship with your flesh and blood humans that are sitting here next to you in the day-to-day? You know, because if it's a negative group, it's going to prioritize its views and its goals and its agendas over the lives of the humans that it's affecting for the negative. Okay, doesn't even care about them. They're just straw, wheat, and chaff to be blown through for their own embetterment. You know, and you could be next. You could be next as far as they're concerned. Okay, so it's always good to find somebody that's objective enough that you can bounce some of the ideas that you're garnering, some of the ideas that you're following, and that you're moving along with. Talk to somebody else about them. You know, somebody that you feel is objective enough, maybe even somebody that will challenge them, so that you can think it through. Because sometimes when we're following and when we're in these group containers, we don't think about the impact that they have on our own personal vision at times. Sometimes we get blind. We get blinded. Sometimes this happens. And we're the ones that then end up having to pick up the pieces at the end of this thing, you know, especially when it comes close to us starting to understand what's going on, because then that's when we start saying no, or that's when we stop being so present at meetings, or that's when we stop calling so much. And then guess what? Our neck is on the chopping block here shortly. So that's just how it goes, you know? So here's basically how we could regain some of our personal sovereignty, our own rule, start getting back to ourselves in the situation, okay? And sometimes it's going to cause us to have to look at some of the earlier texts that were shared between you and some of these peoples in the group. And maybe you felt at some points in times that things that were said, you know, they prioritized what they had going on over what you had going on for yourself, you know. And maybe what you had going on for yourself was like, man, you needed some mental health time for yourself, man. You needed a little bit of time to sit back and think and get yourself in order, man, because you didn't want to just jump at the drop of a dime on something that they wanted you to do. You know what I mean? And then you were villainized for it. Maybe you can look at ledgers of certain conversations where it's like, man, you know, this is actually unhealthy. And sometimes it takes stepping away from those type of communications and going back and looking at it. And then you see, man, this was a totally toxic situation. And you'll see that a group can act as one person does when they're acting narcissistically and trying to gain narcissistic control over you. Okay. And another thing is, like, you know, once you do start breaking away, start investing in individuals that you might have not spent as much time with due to the clashing of these ideologies, especially if they'll take you back and if they'll want to listen to you or want to be around you, especially if the type of group that you were involved in was caustic enough to make it to where you couldn't deal with those people. You know, it was against the rules. You know what I mean? Start talking to people with different values, with different mindsets that will help you to kind of get over some of that shadow material that, you know, is still in there maybe, but that's getting a little bit clear. There's an opening that's showing you the light. It's going to help you deal with, man, why did I think so negatively about some of these people? You know, it's going to help you get past some of those views that you had as being an outstanding member of certain groups of these nature that were just being a pariah and preying upon you and utilizing your vital essence for their own furtherance. Okay, so think to yourself too, you know, if I lay down certain borrowed certainties that these people gave me, right, what remains of my actual values? If I turn my back on this, what remains of who I am? And a lot of times you'll see that when I had to ask myself this question, I saw that, man, you know, dude, who you were changed, man. You changed so much, man, you know, and in a lot of ways for the worst, you know. When I really started to step away, and when I really started to seek out who I really was, I found that, man, you know, you became so much what they wanted you to be, and fit all the boxes and checked all the circles and filled out all the things that you were supposed to, as far as this check was concerned, and you cashed it in at the expense of who you are, who you really were. And I've been accruing and getting these things back for my own life, you know, and it's healing, it's therapeutic, you know. But you got to ask that, man, if I lay down these borrowed certainties from others, what remains of my actual values? You know what I mean? And then act from that center that you get in small, consistent, and incremental ways. Okay, so we're gonna finish through this because we're almost done here. And once again, sorry for such a long lecture. And if you're still here, I'm hoping that you're gaining a lot from this, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to the 4th century in Rome AD, and we're gonna finish off from here. Okay, so to return now to what I was saying about the 4th century in Rome, okay, the fusion of imperial power and ecclesiastical authority shows how quickly salvation can be domesticated by administration and the administrators. Okay, whether or not a single council canonized the Bible, because it's argued about, okay, Constantine's patronage undeniably yoked spiritual authority to imperial projects. The yoke is something that deals with Libra. And what does the yoke go on? A cow, so that it can push through and cut down or make rows, so that there's things that can be planted, okay, in the fields. So just the word that I use here, yoked, tells you everything. Okay, Constantine's patronage undeniably yoked spiritual authority to imperial projects. And then just take a look at online, if you get the chance sometime, look at Constantine's idea of Sol Invictus, which will show you some more about this idea, you know, the linking of imperial ideas with religious ideas, okay, ecclesial ideas. Okay, the psychological hinge is what matters. Okay, relief from persecution. With the assimilation of Christianity into Rome, for example, right, it created gratitude, which conferred or gave legitimacy, which hardened into loyalty. Look how that happens. Oh, you saved us from the persecution which you guys caused, right? Oh, you accepted us, mercy. Okay, and now we're legitimate, we're accepted here, so guess what, now we're gonna be loyal to you. But they didn't even care about the Christians. Romans didn't care. Constantine didn't care about the Christians. It was just a way to assimilate people and assimilate a larger group of people. It's all about numbers, especially in war, for power. Okay, the pattern survived. Okay, changes of dynasty. It survived changes of dynasty time and time again into the current age, current day. Doctrine, it survived doctrine and flag. Okay, flag changes and different things. Okay, and what did it turn into? It translated into longevity. This is where we see this that this same system translates into longevity. It's here now. It's here to stay. Wish it would go away in some ways, but it's here to stay. Okay, this is why this matters now. Okay, this is exactly why this matters now. We're getting down to the bottom line. If collective Stockholm syndrome describes even part of our modern condition, then liberation is not merely political. It's actually far from it. It is, however, far more psychic and spiritual. It's the disciplined refusal of one and all to outsource their conscience. The courage to separate authority from truth, and the humility to admit when our deepest certainties were installed ideas rather than personally discovered. How many ideas get passed on us that we go with that had nothing to do with us in the beginning, and because we're sold on the looks or just the juice that a certain leader holds, that we just go for it. Oh man, I'm sold, man. Everybody else is my cousin, my uncle. Oh yeah, man, I'm riding with you, man. I'm riding with you all the way into a ditch, you know? So last but not least, I'm gonna throw this out here, and we're getting very close to the end here. Some apologetics, we may say, okay? Some may say, aren't you just pathologizing disagreement? I'll tell you, no, I'm describing mechanisms, okay? This is what this is about. Mechanisms, intermittent reinforcements, double binds, projections that we have, right? And that we make without predetermining any policy outcome. We're not even looking at what the outcome of what it is that we're pushing is going to lead to for others, okay? You can hold your commitments while refusing capture. We don't have to be a part of these groups, these ideologies. We don't have to be a part of these things, and we can hold on to what it is that we want to do as far as our goals are concerned, you know? But some of us don't have these goals or have an idea of who the heck we are in the first place. Is why we'll give ourselves into these groups, because through situations that they take us through, we find out what we are, what we can do, or what we're not, okay? And then some may say, oh, but some threats are real, man. Yes, I do recognize that, but recognizing capture doesn't deny real danger. It prevents so-called leaders from exploiting danger, using it as a tool, as an experiment made on you to fine-tune their ability to demand unwavering obedience from you. They're trying to figure out how they can get all of their constituents to follow even just that much more better. They're running numbers on it, and they're running numbers on you. They're running numbers on me all the time. It's happening all the time with penalties for certain things, with certain impositions that are coming out. Okay, either you're going to pay it or you're going to get the fine. If you can't pay the fine, you're going to jail. You know, you got to see how this is going on, how this is happening in our society, in groups, within the government, through legislations and things of that nature, okay? And some may have totally sidestepped what it was that I was saying here, and they might ask, well, isn't myth necessary? You know, because they may think I'm down in Christianity, which I'm not here. Yes, humans are myth-making creatures, I'll answer you, and myth supplies the inherent search for meaning, okay, which is at the core of all humanity. The task is not devolution into mythlessness, but making evolution into myth literacy, using stories to serve life and to serve one's own life rather than to consume it in service to the gross and hidden demands of the other, in capital letters, because the other is that leader or those group of leaders that we never see. They never sat and had dinner with us. They never visited us in our time of sickness, but yet we'll shed our blood in a war overseas for them, or we'll do harm to our neighbor just so that we can get a nod from afar. Oh man, they were talking about you, man. They say they're liking everything that you got going on right now. Nah, no thanks. I'm not proposing nihilism or cynicism. I'm proposing true maturity, faith that blesses rather than binds, faith in the self-knowledge, gnosis, patriotism that serves the vulnerable rather than the variety that sanctifies the powerful, communities that tolerate conscientious dissent because they trust that truth will withstand scrutiny, leaders who earn loyalty instead of extracting it with fear and relief cycles, that back and forth that they throw you through narcissistically. So from Nicaea to your YouTube home feed, the forms we've the forms have changed, but the psyche hasn't. We are still meaning seekers, still anxious animals looking for a sheltering story. When those stories become cages, we can notice the bars. Sometimes this noticing comes in glimmers which beg that you step outside of the matrix of the archons, rulers. Okay, that's what that means. The language we didn't choose, the fears we didn't verify, the gratitude that follows punishment, the sheer and total terror of stepping outside the script and being one's self. Or at least following that unction, okay? As opposed to somebody that you put in place of that, okay? So to walk free is to honor the gifts of our traditions without surrendering our conscience to them, okay? To love our communities without idolizing their leaders, and to idolize is to make a god out of X, Y, or Z leader, right? And to stand with the suffering even when the myth says stand elsewhere. This is how we break the bond, how we exit captivity without becoming captors ourselves. Plato's cave now this is the direct end. Stay with me, we're almost done. Plato's cave is a perfect mythic story that aptly summates the ideas we have encountered in this lecture. And I'll give you a very brief synopsis of the story and also tell you a few reasons why this resonates, okay? We got to exit the cave, okay? In Plato's story, prisoners are chained in a cave from birth, facing a wall, okay? Behind them, unseen puppeteers pass objects before a fire. The prisoners see only the shadows, okay? Only the shadows, and take those shadows for reality. One captive is freed, stumbles into the light, and eventually sees the sun, true reality. He returns to rescue the others, but they mock him, call him dangerous, and would rather kill him than leave the cave. They prefer the familiar prison and comforting story the shadows provided. This story, which I have covered in previous lecture, encapsulates the idea of the collective Stockholm syndrome. And here's why, okay? They develop positive feelings, okay? The people that were born in the cave, and we're not talking, when I say they, we're not talking about the guy that left, okay? They develop positive feelings for the captor's world. The shadow show feels safe and meaningful. They reject rescuers. The freed prisoner is treated as a threat. How many people that have spoken out has been looked at as a threat? They identify with the captor's narrative. The puppeteer's illusions define their reality. They reinterpret danger as care. The cave's confinement is experienced as protection from the blinding outside. Okay? Think about that. Just think about that, okay? So I just want to tell you guys, thanks for spending all this time with me here. I'm going to leave you with a few questions to answer in the chat below, or simply to ponder upon as you go along your busy day. So how do we distinguish justified loyalty from captured loyalty? How do we distinguish justified loyalty from captured loyalty? What does individuation look like in a community that values conformity? What's it look like? What's it really look like? Something to think about. Really something to think about. Which stories formed you? Which stories made you who you are today? You know, and you may look back on the idols that you've had, the people you wanted to be like, and what you grew up and into, okay? For example, what is your personal myth? And how do you honor your personal myth without being owned by it? Without it running your life? Without it running you down into the ground? Something to think about, okay? Thank you guys for being here with me, here on Thinking in Circles. And I really want to thank you for those of you that have sat here with me for this hour and 30 minutes, because I know it's been a long time, but these are just some things that have been on my mind to share with you guys. And I thought to myself, man, I don't want to do it because I don't want to talk about anything political or anything that gets close to anything like that, though. But I thought about it. I was like, man, this gets to the core of individuality. People need to step away from this ideology that leaves them locked in this chicken coop, to where it's like they'll continue to follow some ideology of somebody's that they've never seen, that they don't know, and that they never will know, all the way to the grave, without knowing who they truly are or what they truly desire. And this is what I want to endeavor here with this talk to give back to you. And if I've helped you, please comment on this video. Please like, share, subscribe. And other than that, and more and above and beyond all else, be blessed. Have a great day. Have a great week. And catch me once again back here on Thinking in Circles. I'm out.